Time for another edition of the Kaufman Corner podcast. With you, as always, the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, one of the co-founders of Baseball Prospectus. Soren Petro here from Sports Radio 810 WHB. We're going to talk about the Royal system. We'll talk about one of the guys who graduated, a couple of the guys that have graduated from the system recently. One, Jac Caglianone, one, Noah Cameron, and then what is left of the Kansas City Royal system. We'll even preview the 25 draft. Can't think of anybody better to do it with than the great Keith Law. Nobody does a better job with the prospects, the minor league systems than Keith Law. Whatever time we have left at the end, we will talk about the first week of Jac Caglianone. We're doing it right here, right now on the Kaufman Corner podcast.
You're listening to the Kaufman Corner podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany on the Royals, and a former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by David Starnes Allstate Insurance, covering all the important things in your world. Home, business, life, and even the fun stuff as well. Motorcycle, boat, ATV, you name it, get with Dave and he'll have you covered. Give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave today. He'll give you peace of mind for the things in your life most important to you. And now, here are your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
All right, thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it. Back at it here on the Kaufman Corner podcast. And Rany, love it. Keith Law, always the best. By the way, my Bible for my fantasy baseball minor league drafting is always the Keith Law list, and it has served me very, very well over the years. Jackson Churio, Fernando Tatis, thank you very much.
I will also say it's not just for fantasy purposes, but every July for the actual major league draft.
Yes,
we'll get into this, but I could just say unreservedly that at least prior to Brian Bridges being hired as the new head of the draft, the Royals would have done a much better job with their first round picks if they had just taken the best player available on Keith Law's draft board each year. And some of my frustration with them is because they did not. So we'll get into that. But Keith, absolutely, his opinions rank with anybody in the industry. And
yes.
to have him on.
Absolutely the best. Without further ado, let's bring on the best. We welcome Keith Law from The Athletic, senior Major League Baseball writer for The Athletic, former assistant general manager. He's done it all. He is also an avid board game player. Does that make you a gamer or a boarder or a board gamer?
A gamer. I would say I'm a gamer.
Okay.
Or just a nerd. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I wear it proudly.
Yeah, absolutely. Keith, thanks so much for the time. We appreciate you joining us. And, first of all, let's start with the guy that just graduated up, Jac Caglianone. I'm kind of interested in, what you saw in him at Florida and maybe how he's progressed or evolved now, maybe how much he's grown or not grown. What your impression of what he's done here in less than 12 months since he entered the Royal system?
Yeah, and he has grown. He's, I think, made some pretty significant adjustments to I think a little bit to his swing and a little bit to his approach, but the sum of everything that he did is pretty significant. So I do have history with him back at Florida, saw him hit and saw him pitch. Everybody talked about him as a two-way player. Like that's I'm pointing here. Wait, yeah, there. That I was like, that is a reliever, 100%. He'd already blown out his arm, his elbow once. I'm like, you don't mess with that. This guy's got 40 homer potentially. Just let him go hit. But there was a little tendency to chase. It was not atrocious, but just a little bit of, he expands the zone a bit. You could definitely get him left on left with breaking stuff. It's like he's going to take some time. He's going to swing and miss a little more than you'd like. And they send him to fall league, which most teams don't send their draftees to fall league. I do like it selfishly because I go to the fall league, but he looked exhausted. And so I wasn't holding anything against him, but he didn't look that good. fast forward to March of this year, and then I see him in spring training. It's, oh, wait a minute. Now he's shortened up. He's pulling his hands inside to get to those pitches that obviously he's a big guy. People are going to try to attack him in to see if his swing is too long. He looked like he was controlling the zone a little bit better. And I think we saw all of that. He was in Double-A. And then he got to Triple-A, and it just wasn't much of a sample. It looked like he might be, obviously the power was always still there, but is he getting a little bit less disciplined against its better pitching in Triple-A? So that's a long way of saying, like, he's going to hit bombs. He's going to have huge exit velocities, whatever you're looking for. The power is there. I am very much watching him for the quality of the at-bats, not so much for the outcomes, but just, all right, what is he going to do as, major league pitchers are, to borrow a line from our friend Joe Sheehan, right? They're wizards. They can do all kinds of crazy stuff. They can throw that, some variety of slider that's just this much off the plate. Like, that's the pitch that's going to kill Jack until he makes the adjustment. Things like that. He's not chasing the one that's 3 feet off the plate. I'm not worried about that, but I am worried that he is a big guy. He swings really hard. I think they will exploit him just a little bit off the edges of the plate, and it might take time for him to adjust. The good news is, like I said, it's unreal power. And so he's going to buy himself a lot of time, because if pitchers do make a bit of a mistake, he's going to demolish it, and he's going to create plenty of value even as he's learning some of the finer points of hitting.
So Keith, I mean, he's fascinating because he's such a unique profile, but particularly for a Royals hitter. Like, this is not a player where in some ways he is, in some ways he isn't, right? Because the willingness to chase, like when they came to their draft pick last year, remember the top two guys on I think on your list, and still at the top of your prospect list available were Caglianone and JJ Weatherholt. And you knew which one the Royals were going to be interested in because okay, which is the guy who commands the strikes and which was the one who isn't. But the difference was,
that's not what I was going to say, but yes, it's also true. Yes.
Well, I've been doing 40 years of history. It's hard to turn a battleship in midstream. In part because you shouldn't have a battleship in the middle of a stream. That doesn't sound like probably right. But the 80 power. I mean, this is the kind of power I haven't seen in a Royals uniform since certainly the exit velocities. Like Bo Jackson, maybe the only comp that I could really think of hitting when we saw him at 120.9 on a line drive in Double-A. Like 115, I've not seen 120 from a guy in a Royals uniform. So, but that mix is just so interesting because, like I said, if he can harness it, the ceiling is higher than I can imagine. But there is a low floor if he gets eaten alive by stuff that's off the plate.
Right.
And I just wonder, is from what you hear, are the Royals, like they talk a good game about this, about the importance of swing decisions and the importance of him knowing the strike zone. But obviously, this is the organization that has drawn by far the fewest walks of any team in baseball over the last 20 years, 30 years, 40, however many years you want to pick. Do you have any sense? I mean, and he's, he hasn't walked yet in the major leagues. His chase rate is above average, but it's not Salvador Perez levels.
Right.
So I'm curious, just since he was drafted till now, do you feel like that's an area that he has made progress with? Is that something he continues to show the ability to improve at against major league caliber pitching?
Yes, I would say that overall answer to that is yes. And I think you kind of got a little bit at, what do the Royals think about this? And my sense is they understand that that's going to be critical to him getting to that ceiling. And it's not necessarily, he needs to walk a lot. I think eventually he will, because as he tightens up that command of the zone too, pitchers are going to, but once he's really demonstrated the kind of damage he can do, pitchers are going to try to work away from him and he'll take those pitches. I mean, that's my hope for him. I think ultimately that's where this goes. And the fact that he's already made these little changes where it looks like he is not chasing those pitches well out of the zone, even as much as he did some of his time at Florida. And the fact that he did show that he's got, just from where his hands are, that he's able to stay inside. I may have told Soren, I may have even told you a story. I was at spring training on the backfield, and he got a pitch that was like middle in. It was a strike. But that is a pitch that it's not easy for a bigger hitter to get to. And he pulled his hands in and he got the barrel to that pitch and sent it out to dead center on one of those backfields in surprise, enough that you could hear all of the players on both sides go. And I saw some of the Royals executives out there, and they, their Cheshire cat grins all over their faces. It's like, yeah, it's pretty unusual, actually. I mean, I see guys with sort of pull power all the time. It's actually not that interesting anymore. And there are plenty of teams out there, and the Royals probably not one of them, who say, we can get that for guys. If a guy hits the ball hard, we can teach them to pull the ball in the air. If a guy's hitting it hard but it's on the ground, well, we can teach that. We can teach that. The Royals haven't had a lot of success teaching that. And they have not had a lot of success with power hitters, period. Right? For forever, it was Steve Balboni held the franchise record for homers in a season. Not that I have to remind you guys of that. But, Caglianone just stands out so much in the history of the Royals, too. I would guess they've had very, very few prospects with this kind of power upside. The only real thing I would say in terms of like how concerned am I, obviously we see guys we think who are going to hit and they don't hit. That's just a given with pretty much any hitting prospect. It's right field or it's first base. He's pretty good at first base. He's a good athlete for a bigger guy. I would really, really love to see him be a right fielder long term. I think he should be an average defender out there. He
Really?
hasn't played it that much. We're guessing, all of us, especially from the amateur side, from just watching him move around first base, like that guy is way too athletic. And people at the University of Florida, we would play him in the outfield, but he's a pitcher, so we don't want to overtax his arm. I can understand that. But for a guy his size, he moves pretty well. And I would really like to think he could get somewhere around just, net zero, right? If he's a 0 outs above average guy in right field and hits like I think he's going to hit, you got a star. I don't think first base is a disaster. I'm just hopeful he can play the more valuable position.
That's interesting. You look at the wry smile on Rany's face right now.
We've had this.
Yeah.
I'll politely call it a discussion for months now, and from now on, Soren, I'm just gonna play the Keith Law card anytime.
It's a great card to play. I mean, it's. I feel like Jim Carrey in Liar Liar. Like, I object. Why? Because it's incredibly damaging to my case. Because I don't like. Yeah, I mean, I do like hearing Keith say it because now I'm much more open to it because I trust Keith's eye and his knowledge of the game of baseball. We looked up guys over 250 playing the outfield, right? And there's not many. You can do it on the StatHead search. Instantly everybody goes to Aaron Judge.
There's one, right? You're not allowed to use Aaron Judge for a comparison for anything. Right. No one is allowed to do that. Right?
There's an outlet.
Right. It's Nolan Ryan. When I talk about pitch counts, some mouth breather will show up in the comments or in the replies and say, well, what about Nolan Ryan? You're not allowed. You are not allowed. You have to go read an entire book on survivorship bias, and then we can talk about Nolan.
Exactly.
Aaron Judge he is an outlier on multiple dimensions. He is the largest outfielder in baseball history. And I don't think anybody his height has been even half this productive at his
and he
age.
Played center for years.
He played center. I know.
And I
never thought that was going to happen.
And my stance has been, and what would he have done if he had played first? If you'd given him a break, like he's incredible.
Oh, yeah. He used to get hurt a lot more. I mean, that was my thing. It's like, well, now this guy's in his 30s. He's going to get right. We all get hurt more as we get older. And the history of guys his size. I mean, if we were having this conversation about Jack 8 years from now, we might talk about that. The history of guys that size is not good. They get hurt a lot, right? But I don't know, more of them to hurt.
Yeah, but I want to underscore it. You see enough to be. I mean, like Randy's right. It's against what I'm saying, but it's incredibly liberating because I say it because I'm terrified the guy's going to get hurt. They're going to run him out there. He's going to play in the outfield. They're going to like, we can do it. Aaron Judge does it, and then they're going to tear. Because I said, look, he was drafted to hit. That's they traded for Jonathan India to get on base, not play left field. And I said he can play left field as long as it doesn't affect his getting on base. They traded for him to be a leadoff hitter. They drafted Jac Caglianone to hit the ball over the wall. If he can run around center field and keep hitting the ball over the wall, fine. If he can do it in right field, fine. But he has to hit. It can't be like, well, he's kind of tired out there, and well, then why'd you put him out there, right? But you are quite confident that he can make that work, at least initially. Let's say optimistic that it can work out.
I always, way before the Royals took him, I always wanted to see him in right field. Obviously, he has the arm,
right?
And like I said, he moves well. There's a player in this year's draft. Don't laugh. His name is Henry Ford, who his freshman year at UVA he played first because they had claimed they had three better guys in the outfield. They stuck him in the outfield this year. It's like, he's fine. He was a 70 defender at first. So everyone thought, all those of us who saw him, we all thought he's going to be fine in the outfield. You just want to see it, right? In that case, we got the opportunity to see it. Ford is in this year's draft. Jack only played first and pitched at Florida. He really hasn't played a whole lot of outfield at any point, maybe since high school. So it's still a little bit speculative. I'm basing this off of, again, how athletic I think he is, how I saw him move around the bag at first base. And to your point about just general fatigue too, he's not pitching. And that takes, it was high effort, high velocity. Like that must have been incredibly freeing for him to just not have to put all that effort in. And I wonder if, will he be a little bit faster? It's not going to be base running speed, but I'm just talking about being able to have more range in right field. It seems logical. But it all comes down to the fact that he's a good athlete who moved really well when he did play first base and had good range and good hands, played that position well enough. Let's try it in right and see if it works.
So what's the upside right now? Where do you put the ceiling now after what you've seen him do?
I've always said 40 homers. I don't think that's changed. I think that's always been the ceiling. The question is, what does the rest of the stat line look like? Ultimately, and this is probably a couple years down the road, is he a guy who gets to 60 to 70 walks a year, which would be the best in franchise history, I think, based on what you're saying, Rany?
Close.
Well, they just release him, right? Because no, you can't do that's too many. You can't. We're sorry, that's not allowed.
Listen,
give them ideas, Keith.
Yeah, and Keith, you say that, but who the last guy was to walk 80 times in a Royals uniform? Kevin Seitzer.
Oh God, really?
Yes.
I think it's
or did somebody ruin that a year or two ago?
Carlos Santana finally got there like 3 years ago. But
he was the first since Kevin
nobody's gotten to 90. Nobody's gotten to 90 since Seitzer. And
since Seitzer had on. Yeah.
God, I actually thought Witt walked more than he only walked 57 times last year. It's such a great year. I just assumed he walked more. Anyway, I think Jack can be sort of that slightly lower average, probably going to strike out, 140, 150 times a year, which we don't really care about at this point. I'm not saying that as a negative, but it ends up sort of the lower batting average, but he boosts it with on-base percentage. It's 40 homers with, let's say, even if it's slightly below average defense in right field, right? That's probably the second best player on the Royals. I was going to say best automatically, but the guy they got at shortstop's pretty good. I think Jack is the kind of guy who, in his best years, is in the MVP discussion. But he'll have some years in there where the batting average just dips a little bit. It's 32 homers instead of 40, right? And he's still a great player. There are ways it could go wrong, but we're talking ceiling. We're talking like what is a realistic upside. That's what I think. Maybe it's a 240 batting average, but the rest of the line looks really good. And that is, as we can see now, a really productive. God, if he hits 30 homers, he's a really productive player.
Yeah, well, he'll lead the team. That's for sure.
Yes.
And Your Honor, I do want to point out that, the reason we couldn't find anybody with 250 pounds who could play the outfield is Joey Gallo is listed at 249.
Yeah, well, that's hilarious. Yeah, but those things are all. I mean, the number of times I've looked up a player, I'm like, that's a lie, right?
Yeah,
like if that guy's 5'10", I'm clearly 6 foot.
Yeah. They're suggested. It's like MSRP.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have much else to ask about Caglianone. I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
See him out there every day.
We're going to burn up our time with Keith.
Yeah, let's move on to the thing that I found very intriguing in your write-up. You recently released your updated top 50 prospects list right before Caglianone was promoted, and I think you had him, I want to say 13th on the list. But in the write-up, you made a reference to something we've discussed on the show, which is that the Royals' second-round pick last year, David Shields. is also off to a very good start. The high school pitcher who was drafted, he was 17. He's only 18 now, and he's in A-ball. The numbers have been very impressive. He's throwing strikes. He's basically dominating. I think another 4 shutout innings today or yesterday, no walks. And you said that this is it looks like an excellent first draft for new scouting director Brian Bridges. So I'd like to hear your thoughts, what you've heard about David Shields and basically, Brian Bridges as a scouting director in general, because that was the biggest change the Royals have made on their player development side in the last couple of years.
And I was a big fan of Bridges' work with Atlanta too. He was that club that won the World Series a couple of years ago. Bridges' hands were all over it. He had a tremendous track record drafting, and I really appreciate that he uses what I would call a blended approach, where he's an old school scout. And I've talked to him many times. I see him multiple times every spring. He likes players and he thinks about players from a traditional scouting standpoint, but he's evolved as the industry has evolved also. And so he's very comfortable working with the analytics to try to find the ideal players. And what I really loved about what he did last year, like Caglianone was a guy where if he'd gone first overall in the draft, nobody would have blinked. There were questions. I don't think he was the best prospect in the draft, but he was one of them. And the upside certainly justifies that. You get a guy like that with your first pick, and then he turned around and took maybe the best projection high school pitcher in the draft in Shields, where Shields had average stuff, I would say. And I think that's still true. My understanding is the velocity has not really ticked up yet, but he's left-handed. He's got a great delivery. He's really athletic too. I believe he was also a football guy, and he throws strikes. He threw strikes in high school, and sometimes that doesn't always translate. So far, it really has for Shields. So what we've seen from him so far is just kind of what we saw in high school. The delivery is still great. I actually had a scout randomly send me a text with a video of Shields throwing one pitch and just saying how much he loved the delivery. And he does that. He throws strikes. He's got 3 pitches. Nothing's plus. Right now, it's just 3 kind of average pitches. He clearly knows what he's doing. He has some feel. We're just going to wait for the projection, right? That some point in the next 2 to 3 years, you'd like to see the velocity start creeping up. And I do think that's not just going to make the fastball better, will also make the slider more effective. So I'd say so far, so good. Obviously, anytime I take a high school pitcher, he's just healthy. It's so far, so good. But also that he's throwing strikes. So many of these guys that the Marlins took Noble Meyer and Thomas White, their first 2 picks, I think it was 2 years ago. And Noble Meyer can't stop walking guys, and White had a good first year, and now he's been walking a lot of guys. Like, it's really hard. So you take a guy with a reputation for really good control and even command as a high schooler, and he shows that that's true in pro ball. You clearly did something right. And I know that the industry is talking about Shields as, hey, this is what we thought it was going to be, but it still looks really good. You're just going to have to be patient to wait for the body to fill out and for him to start throwing harder. And then I think, like I said, for the entire arsenal to get better as a result.
Where are they on, like is Brian Sweeney kind of the finisher? Like, is he starting to build a reputation? Because Noah Cameron was not and listen, I don't think anybody expects him to go 6 innings and give up just 1 run every game for the rest of his life. Right. We know that there's going to be
I loved Cameron, and I was like, oh my God, they're calling him up now. Like, I just saw him in spring training. He was topping out at like 90, 91. Like, was I too positive on this guy? And now, right now, he's been Kevin Napier for the last month.
Well, is he the example? I mean, is he, I guess the proof in the pudding that they're doing a better job on it? Because listen, the whole Dayton Moore era, we're not giving back the 2 pennants and the world championship flags that fly at Kauffman Stadium. So I want to be clear, but they were not good for a guy who, in one of the first interviews I did with him, said pitching is the currency in baseball.
Yep.
You're Donovan Ventura. Yeah, you're Donovan Ventura and Danny Duffy here into the list of starting pitchers that they were able to develop over the decade plus that he was there. And I would say many times, it's not as hard as they're making it look. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy, but they're not as hard as it's making it look. I mean, is Noah Cameron the proof that, they got a better plan to what they're doing in developing pitching?
I think so. Like, I think in general, they're doing a better job developing just kind of across the board. I think a lot of things changed with having a development guy become the GM, I think also helped. And then he could take his philosophy and implementing maybe things he wasn't able to do. And I mean, JJ, it's not like he's ever going to say a cross word about anybody, really. But I do get the sense that they have been modernizing things on the hitting and the pitching side. What I find so interesting about Cameron is that I don't think that guy gets to the majors under the previous regime. I just don't think they give him the opportunity because he doesn't throw hard, right? He is so atypical. And I love Noah Cameron because I think he can really, really pitch. Even I get nervous, right? The guys with a fastball, it's that light. There's some minimum. I always think of the Far Side cartoon. You must be as tall as this sign to attack the city. Like you have to throw this hard to pitch in the major leagues, right? There is some inflection point, especially to be a starter. But I guess maybe he's just on the right side of it. And the fact that there was space for a Noah Cameron to progress up the system, for them to recognize his value, despite the fact that it's kind of atypical, for them to give him opportunities in the big leagues, also speaks really well to the new regime. They are open-minded. And when I see guys in their system, it's different. You get a lot of different looks. Whereas I live in Wilmington, Delaware, they were a Royals affiliate before the pandemic. That doomed draft class of Singer, Lynch, Cowher, Bubic, at least he seems to be working out, Cox, Bolin, all those college pitchers, right? And they got so little out of it. But one thing was, it was kind of a lot of the same formula. Weren't all exactly the same, but a lot of similarity. They just kind of kept going for the same guy. I thought at the time, well, that's fine, right? Because it's just numbers. There's safety in numbers. Several of these guys will work out, and that's obviously not how it happened. Maybe there's a little benefit to a little more diverse approach, and they certainly seem to be thinking differently in terms of how they're bringing guys up through the system.
So the Royals' third round pick last year, speaking of college pitching, that they went the kind of the, I want to say like the safe, durable, SEC, Friday night starter with Drew Beam. So again, you're talking about the diverse portfolio. They went a completely different direction there. He's got very good numbers in A-ball. I've seen a report that his velocity has actually ticked up a little bit since he was drafted, but I'm curious if you have any kind of scouting report on him. And then just in general, anybody else in last year's draft, obviously the top 3 picks are the most important, but if there's anybody else that you've heard, standing out or taking a step forward as a prospect so far this year.
Yeah, what I've heard on Beam and seen video, I haven't seen him live at all this year, is pretty similar to what I saw when he was at the University of Tennessee. You're hoping it's a back-end starter. It's strikes over stuff. There's not really an out pitch there, but he does tend to work within the strike zone. If he can avoid too much contact on the fastball, he's going to stay in the rotation. I'm not sure. And I don't have great data on pitch shapes, for example, or any of the things that teams try to use to predict how much contact they're going to give up on a fastball. I know when I saw him in college, that might be a little straight, but he's got enough other weapons. Maybe he can pitch around it. I think they need to challenge him at Double-A. He's pitched well at high A, but he hasn't struck out a ton of guys even at that level. As an SEC product, I think he should be ready for the next stop. And from the same draft, they took AJ Krause, who was also in Tennessee's rotation and who outpitched Beam actually last spring, if I remember correctly. They put him right in the bullpen, and I kind of like it, even though I understand you might want to make guys starters as long as you can because starters are hard to find. Krause was going to be a reliever all day long. He's pitched really well. Again, it's been in high A. Another guy I'd like to see them sort of challenge at the next stop. It's a little bit more of an unusual lower arm slot. There's some deception. Maybe he's going to have some trouble with lefties as he gets to higher levels, but as maybe just once through the order as a guy who has a history of starting, he can be more than just come in and face the minimum number of batters. So I don't think he's an elite prospect, but I think by putting him directly in the bullpen, they may get more value out of him.
We're talking with Keith Law from The Athletic, senior Major League Baseball writer, former front office man in baseball, the best when it comes to breaking down the systems, the prospects, the draft. We'll get to the draft in a minute. You mentioned not having a weapon, right? And you mentioned kind of the pitching, that 2018 class. Chris Bubic has really emerged, right? He clearly is different now than what he was when he first came up.
Mm-hmm.
I'll come back to Brian Sweeney. Is he whether it's him or are there guys that can just hand the weapon to somebody that are kind of the, what was Leo? I wasn't, mature enough to know what Leo Mazzoni was doing. I knew he was rocking on the side of the bench, and everybody seemed to be better, right? He didn't get in the way of Maddox and Smoltz and Glavin, but in Glavin he was part of the development process as well. I guess Smoltz too, but they would drop in Kevin Millwood and he would be good, and they had all these other guys. I mean, how hard is it now with all these labs and the spin rates and the cameras and everything? Is it easier to take a guy? You mentioned Bream having, missing a weapon. Is it easier to give them that weapon somewhere along the line where before you had to have your arsenal was your arsenal and you just tried to, sharpen it up on your way up?
It's a great question. I paused because I'm trying to figure out how not to spend the next half hour answering it.
Okay.
I'm being a little glib. I'm going to oversimplify just a little bit here, but it's pretty easy to give a guy a pitch. It's really hard to give a guy the right pitch, the pitch that's going to work for him, the pitch that's going to round out his arsenal, the pitch that's going to address deficiencies elsewhere in his repertoire, the pitch that's not going to cause him to make some kind of mechanical change to try to get the correct shape or get the correct spin rate on it. So, I just, by virtue of where I live, I see a decent amount of the Mets system. Everybody in the damn Mets system throws 6 pitches. And nobody needs that. Nobody needs to throw that many pitches. Also, these are all prospects. They're having a hard time throwing 2 pitches. So I don't know why you have to have 3 different sliders, slider and a sweeper and a cutter. Can we get the first one down? So on some level, it's like, yeah, that's great that you've got a pitching lab that can give guys new pitches, but it's almost like you give your kid a new toy and it's the only thing they want to play with for the next couple of weeks, or they just play with the box and they don't even touch the toy. And you're like, why did I spend any money? But so in a lot of these cases, like I even write about this a lot. Well, this guy needs this extra pitch. Usually it's to solve the platoon issue. It's the number one reason I suggest that a guy get a different pitch. I do think, my recollection of Bubic, seeing him as a prospect too, it was fastball changeup. He never had much of a breaking ball. And I just pulled up his Savant page to make sure I wasn't talking out of thin air here. And the pitch they're labeling a sweeper, at least, has been really, really good for him. So he certainly didn't have anything that fit that description when he was coming up through the system.
Well, he didn't have it when he got to the majors either. In fact, let's just say he didn't have it until Brian Sweeney became the pitching coach.
So that's my question. I don't know who's responsible for that. You guys would know. I don't know who gave him that pitch. Did he find it lying on the street somewhere? Did he get it through mail order? I have no idea. But that pitch seems to have made a huge difference for him. He always had the changeup. I'll give credit where it's due. Eric Longenhagen at Fangraphs was always a Bubic fan. He's like, that changeup is going to work. The fastball is good enough. There's a ton of deception. The guy needed a breaking ball. He needed a better breaking ball. And that has turned him from a guy who's maybe a nice back end starter, but has no ceiling, to obviously the Chris Bubic that you see right now. I have wondered if they could turn back time, so to speak, and have that 2018 draft class again. Would a lot of those outcomes be different? Dan Lynch to me is obviously he's had a lot of arm problems, including shoulder. So you can't write that out of it. But also he got to the majors and turned out his fastball played way below its velocity. Would they have done something different with him in a different world where the current staff was able to work with that guy? I don't know. Might have been a different story for him and for several of the other pitchers they drafted in that era who didn't work out.
So I have one more question about a prospect, because it's a guy who, I've loved and raved about on the show, and yet I still don't know what to make of him because his profile, I think, is just kind of unique. And that's Carter Jensen.
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
Look, at least, on paper, numerically, he's still 21 years old for a couple more weeks. He's in AA. He's hitting well. He's a catcher. He throws out a decent percentage of guys from behind the plate. He shows power in spurts. He has great plate discipline at times, but I don't know if the entire package is going to work. And he's really more than anybody else in the system. I feel like he's a guy where I really would trust a scouting impression of can this work at the major league level? Can he be a starting catcher in the majors?
I think he can. I actually think the Royals are pretty strong at catcher. We'll see. Blake Mitchell's coming back from injury, but assuming he comes back 100%, Ramon Ramirez can really hit. The catch, and especially the throw, are a question, but when you hit like that, buys you some time anyway. Jensen is really interesting to me because we were waiting for years for him to kind of put it all together. And he did in part of a season last year. And it looks like he's kind of carried that forward where he's always drawn a ton of walks. Just for a while, for the first couple of years, that was all he did.
Right.
But the interesting thing is when he was in high school, it was, well, this guy can really hit. He's got power, but he can't catch. He's kind of fat and all this stuff. Then he gets into pro ball. And within a year or so, everyone's saying he's a really good defensive catcher. He just can't hit. All he does is draw walks. I feel like we're sort of reaching that Devin Mesoraco point where like everything is now actually coming together. Mesoraco, for folks who don't remember, first round pick, stunk for 2 years, just awful in the minors. Like this was a bust. What a terrible pick. And then it was like the switch flipped. And he had a couple of years as a great prospect. He got to the majors and it was pretty good before the injuries really started to add up. I feel like Jensen might be kind of on that similar arc, at least hopefully the first half, not the second half, where he gets on base. He doesn't strike out excessively. There is power, and there's more power in there, I think, than what he's shown this year. It's kind of surprising. Northwest Arkansas is usually a pretty good place to hit for some power. And he can definitely catch. He can catch, throw, receive. Never heard a bad word about him, like game calling or anything like that. So, I'm inclined to think, yeah, he probably is an everyday catcher. Also, the bar to be an everyday catcher right now is extremely low. Like I shouldn't even have my hand on the screen. It's so low. And just, I just, again, pulled up just what he's doing this year. He's doing everything you could want him to do. The fact that, it's particularly the fact that he's making contact at this rate, there's power in there. He's going to get to more than enough power, I think, to be an everyday catcher. And maybe he wouldn't even have to, because if he posts a 340, 350 on base and plays good defense, that probably makes you an everyday catcher right now, at least by WAR or whatever metric you want to use, because catchers stink. Turns out it's really hard. It's just a really hard thing to do.
It would make you the highest on-base catcher for the Royals. It's at least Jim Sundberg, if not Daryl Porter.
That's Mike McFarland slander there, Soren.
I love Mac, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing Max. What was Max on base? Am I not giving him enough?
He had a couple years in there.
That's one for Stathead.
Okay. Listen, I love McFarland. He does stuff for our radio station. He's the best guy you're going to meet ever. And I was a huge fan. Anyone who will just start a fight with Tony Phillips right there in the batter's spot. And I like Tony Phillips, the player. I heard he was kind of a pain in the ass as a guy, but never mind that. How about this draft? Like, we'll end on that, Keith. We're stealing too much time with you already here. What do the Royals have? To get done in this draft? Like, is it one that they can, from not being, we're thrilled that we're not looking at them drafting 4, 5, 6, here for the first time. They weren't going to get the lottery anyway, because it was going to be too many years in a row in the lottery. Mm-hmm. So they bounced down. What kind of draft is it for them where they pick?
Good year to miss the lottery, I would say. It is the weakest top of the draft that I can remember, going at least back to the Mickey Moniak draft, which didn't look great at the time and turned out to be an absolute disaster. That whole top 10 was just awful. I think it's Cal Quantrill and the Seven Dwarfs. This year's draft is there's depth. There's just not the 1-1 types, the clear stars, whether it's one guy or a little subset. There's some good college pitching, particularly left-handed pitching for some reason. There are a lot of high school shortstops, and sifting through them is going to be a challenge for most teams, because those guys they're going to start flying off the board in the top 10, and they're just going to keep going. They're going to get sprinkled in well into the second round. A friend of mine, a scout, and I were kind of going through an exercise. How many high school shortstops go just in the top 2 rounds? And I think we came up with about 15 or so that we felt very, very confident would. Those are not all guys who stay at shortstop, obviously, but they're just guys who play shortstop right now. And so that is one possibility if they are looking for, because knowing Brian Bridges, they're going to look for upside. And the college players who are going to be available at his pick, unless he wants to just take a fairly safe, faster to the majors college starter, there are a couple of those guys. You're probably looking at a low ceiling college position player where they draft. And those guys are fine. They have plenty of value. That's not their style. I would much more expect them to go for one of the high school shortstops who's got some upside, or, not my personal preference, but a high school pitcher. They would. Obviously, Brian Bridges did draft high school pitching numerous times while he was in Atlanta. I know that they'd be open to that. Obviously, they took Shields and paid him last year. They may choose to do that with the first pick. I personally wouldn't do it because just the base rate is high school pitchers taken in the first round fail a lot. But outside of Seth Hernandez, who's a high school pitcher in Southern California, who's going to be long gone, just about every high school pitcher in this draft of any merit is likely to still be available when they pick. Maybe there'll be one more gone at that point. So they would kind of have their pick of the litter. And that is a compelling argument that, yeah, these guys are, it's a high risk class, but we get to pick any of them. Okay, I might be more sympathetic to that. I wouldn't be sympathetic if they were picking 10, but given where they pick, that's a possibility. So if you're asking me, I have to do a mock this week. I haven't started yet, but I would tell you if I'm probably going to end up putting one of those high schoolers with the Royals based on things I've heard, but also based just much more on this is the type of guy they tend to look for. And where they pick in the draft, they're not taking a low ceiling college outfielder, even a guy who's performed a lot. That is just not their flavor.
Yeah, I knew the mock wasn't out because I looked for it. I was like, I don't remember
hiding it. It's actually under my chair.
because it's one of my favorite things that comes out that you do. Hey Keith, we really appreciate it. We said we keep you 30 minutes and we've kept you 40. So which is kind of, that's what we do. Just, I'll be honest with you.
That's fine.
You had to know that going in. It's really on you, Keith. If you,
I can't believe the dog was quiet for 45 minutes. This is fantastic. I'm going to click this off and she's going to bark at ghosts in the street.
I love how Keith says it's fine. And then Rany and I will get a middle finger emoji coming our way as soon as he's done. No, Keith is always very generous. You're the best, Keith. Thanks so much. We appreciate it. We're smarter baseball people for having talked to you. I would encourage everybody to read your great work at The Athletic and look forward to talking to you on down the road, my friend.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, there he goes, Keith Law. He is absolutely fantastic. We are overdue to take a break. We'll do that real quick. And then we will come back and talk about some of the stuff that Keith was talking about. Always great stuff talking with Keith Law. First, though, let's hear from our friends at David Starnes Allstate Insurance. David Starnes Allstate Insurance, serving the Kansas City area and all throughout the Midwest. With David Starnes Allstate, it's not just about fender benders. Beyond traditional safeguards, enjoy perks like roadside assistance for unexpected breakdowns, transportation expense coverage when your car is in the shop, auto replacement protection to keep you on the road in style, and much more. You can give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. Your favorites are back, Kansas City. Now for a limited time at all your KC Whataburger locations, get the Mushroom and Swiss Burger, 2 large beef patties, Swiss American cheese, fire-roasted mushrooms, and creamy au jus. How about the sweet and spicy bacon burger? 2 large beef patties, American and Monterey Jack cheese, bacon, grilled onions, and topped with sweet and spicy pepper sauce. Or grab the patty melt. Even the honey barbecue chicken strip sandwich. They're all perfect with the Whataburger Banana Pudding Shake. Remember, Whataburger's open 24 hours a day with breakfast served from 11 p to 11 a. And don't forget, you can get all your Whataburger favorites and more by downloading the Whataburger app with the QR code. Whataburger, proud sponsor of the Kaufman Corner podcast. Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, serving KC for more than 40 years, voted Kansas City's #1 accident lawyers, helping people with serious injuries from car accidents, work accidents, falls, and other personal injuries. Northland Injury Law doesn't get paid unless they get money for their client. Don't wait, get compensated now. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 22222 or call 816-400-HURT. That's 816-400-4878. The choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. Rany, I agree with this. Terry says Keith Law, essential reading. Enjoy it. I agree. Absolutely fantastic. Always love talking to Keith. So knowledgeable.
I've been working with him now, 28 years. He joined us at base. He's one of we the original 5 of us started Baseball Prospectus in 96. But Keith, I think, might have been the first person to come on board later, and then obviously the first of us to move on to bigger and better things, working for the Blue Jays as their assistant to the general manager, and has had a career in the sport. Great writer, funny and insightful as hell, and just a great scout. And like I said, you could do a lot worse than just follow, his best player available and take that if you're a team looking to draft in the first round. And the Royals, I think about Cam Collier instead of Gavin Cross, or Kyle Teal, who, I got to see make his major league debut Friday night in Chicago when I was there to see Caglianone instead of Blake Mitchell, et cetera, et cetera. Like there are many examples of this. So great to have him on the show. And honestly, I was pleasantly surprised at some of the optimism there on Carter Jensen and what the organization is doing. So he had some nice things to say, and from him that means a lot.
Yeah, and he's he's amended what he said about Jac Caglianone. I mean, what I like is he's always learning, he's always watching, he's always on top of it.
Right.
And Jac Caglianone, he liked as a prospect. He said, "Listen, it wouldn't have been horrible if he'd have been taken number 1 overall. I mean, with that kind of raw power, you could do it." And but he was number 60 coming into the year, and now I think he's like number 13. Some of that's because guys graduate up, but also like as the player progresses, he notes, hey, this is what he's doing now. Look at him getting to these inside pitches. We didn't know that. When a player doesn't progress, I think of Brady Singer, who he gave a list of flaws. I mean, he didn't mind where the Royals took him, right? He would have minded if he'd gone number 1 overall in 2018, which he was talked about early in that year. But he pointed the flaws of not having a weapon for the left-handers. And he talked about where's the third pitch. All the stuff that the Royals fought all along was in his initial write-up of Brady Singer. And so as Caglianone's evolved, his write-up of Caglianone's evolved.
And he said that Caglianone can play right field.
He did.
So this is me taking a victory lap. I'm not. He hasn't proven anything yet, but I'm like, until he does, like I have Keith Law's word now. I'm just gonna hold to that because I'm wrong a lot. But I'm listen. Look, he said he's not sure, but he's optimistic. It's worth the chance, right? It's worth the opportunity. It worked out for the Royals because it's exactly what they needed. And he's a big guy, but he does. We've seen it. Or we probably should get into like what we've seen from Caglianone, but like we've seen him in the outfield, and he doesn't look overmatched. He's not Billy Butler out there. Like I can tell you that after 6 games. So, yeah.
By the way, just for our friends at Whataburger, I'm going to put this. Cotman says testimonial, right? His testimonial was, how to Whataburger after graduation this year? F off, in and out. I love it. I love the patty melt. Go try the patty melt. It's my favorite burger at Whataburger. They do a fantastic job. All right. You wanted to add on Jac Caglianone, some of your observations here. We'll finish with that in our last block of time here. What have you thought of the first week of Jac Caglianone, Randy?
So, yeah, I mean, it's only obviously been 6 games. I got a chance to see him in person. I know we're in Kansas City. We'll get that opportunity on Tuesday. It's a very small sample size, of course. But the things I want to talk about are the frequency of contact and the quality of contact, right? That's really all. When you're talking about, like, what does it take to be an elite hitter? That combination basically sums it up. You could throw in plate discipline, and yes, he doesn't have great plate discipline yet. But it's not, like I said, it's not Salvi-esque. It's not terrible. But let's just start with the simple. He's had 25 plate appearances. He struck out 4 times. Against major league pitching, his strikeout rate right now is 16%. I don't think it's going to necessarily stay that low, but 16%. Again, if he has a 16% strikeout rate at the major league level, Keith was saying, he could strike out 140, 150 times a year, and that's perfectly fine. And yeah, for a guy with 40 home run power, that's absolutely a trade-off you'll make. You just don't want the guy striking out 200 times a year. Although there are guys who can do that and still be productive. A 16% strikeout rate is like 100 strikeouts a year. So like if he can keep it under 25%, you're thrilled. But the thing is, he's making that quality of contact without sacrificing in terms of bat speed. His average bat speed at the major league level is 6 miles an hour faster than the average major league. The average major league swing is around 71.3. Going into today, according to Baseball Savant, his average swing was 77.6. That is not surprisingly, given what we've seen from his exit velos, that is like Giancarlo Stanton territory. Like that's absurd. And then his exit velocities on the balls he's hit it's crazy, right? He's already hit 2 balls, 113 miles an hour at the major league level. Of the 21 balls he's hit 9 over 100 miles an hour. Right now, hard hit is a term Baseball Savant uses to describe a ball hit 95 miles an hour or faster. And I think the major league average, I want to say, is around 36.7% of balls put in play are hit 95. That's across the major leagues. he's well over 50%, right? He's, I believe, at 12 of 21, which is 57%. That is Aaron Judge territory. So his average exit velocity is brought down because he hit like one ball in St. Louis that was like 35 miles an hour. And, his sample size is so small that that one ball brings his average down. But he's hit 9 balls over 101. Like, he's more likely to hit a ball 101 than the average hitter is to hit at 95. That's elite. The only thing he's not doing yet, he's not putting the ball in the absolute happy zone of launch angle, meaning a launch angle in the 28 degrees is ideal for home runs, but generally in the 20s is when you hit home runs. He's only hit 2 balls with a launch angle between 20 and 29 degrees. One of those was his very first plate appearance, which was a really good hit that Victor Scott made a great play on. But he's hit a couple balls in the 30 to 40 degree range. He's hit a lot of balls in the 0 to 10 range, line drives. And today, obviously, he had the 4 hits, and they were all kind of line drives. One was a hard ground ball. The other 3 were line drives. But he just hasn't hit that happy zone quite yet. But I don't think he's going to be like, the worry is that he turns into like Eric Hosmer and he just hits too many ground balls and he doesn't elevate enough. He's shown an ability to elevate, but the balls he's elevated so far have just been a little bit too high. Once he gets into that middle zone, I think we're going to start seeing the home runs come pretty fast. And so from what I've seen, I'm at least as optimistic as I was when he got called up a week ago, maybe more so in terms of his long-term potential.
Yeah, I don't see anything to not like, right? You expect there to be, an adjustment to be made. It's a giant step. We've had a couple of people tell us that the step from AAA to the big leagues is now bigger than it's ever been because of the loss of the minor leagues. I'm not sure why that would be. I haven't quite lined up. I'm not saying it's not true, but I'm trying to understand how less spots makes the top one lower. Do you, first of all, do you agree with that AAA to the big leagues is a bigger jump than it's ever been?
I think it probably is true, in part because
my assumption is if you don't have those bottom end clubs, then guys that you could have pushed further down are pushing up, which would then seemingly push up all the other talent.
My theory, and it's
multiple. You agree that you first? Sorry, and then I want to hear your theory. Sorry to interrupt you, but I first I want to establish you have heard the same thing, right?
I have.
Okay. So now your theory.
Well, my theory basically is that the gap between AAA and the major leagues is directly correlated to the overall quality of baseball, in the sense that I think that baseball players are better now than they ever were, but when, going even back to the 80s and 90s, velocity is up, et cetera, et cetera. I think players are better today than ever. But the reason for that, yes, they're developed better and, they're playing year round, et cetera, but also we are taking people, if you think of the standard distribution, a bell curve, this is me with my hand making the bell curve, right? Major league athletes, professional athletes in any sport are taken from like the extreme right end of that curve in terms of their talent, right? Your talent, you're taking the best of the best. The more of the farther to the right you go, right? In other words, if you're not just getting the best players, you go back to 1920, you were getting the best white people born in the United States, east of the Mississippi, generally speaking, right? Like
right.
1960, now you were getting the best white and black born in America. Now it's, you're getting the best
global
from half the globe that plays the actual sport of baseball, right? So we're moving, the farther to the right you get, the better the talent gets, but also the steeper the curve is between the best 780 players, I guess it is now, who are in the major leagues, and the next 780 that are in AAA. Right? It's a kind of a mathematical idea I've had in my head for a long time. You can actually measure the quality of the sport by how much of a jump there is between AAA and the majors. But it makes sense to me because I believe the quality has gotten better. And certainly anecdotally, people feel like the jump between AAA and the majors is higher than it used to be, or at least for some players. Some players, and this is why what we've seen from Caglianone is exciting. Like, not everybody has a huge adjustment, but I feel like there are a lot more players now who can dominate at AAA and just cannot, they can't reach, they can't hit high velocity at the major league level, or they don't, if they're a pitcher, they don't have the elite stuff to succeed at the major league level. But I do feel like there are more players now who stumble with that promotion. And so the fact that Caglianone has not looked overmatched at all, Until today, the numbers weren't there, but like he was just hitting into tough luck. I mean, he came in today with a batting average under 100. His expected batting average, based on just on the quality of contact, was 292. And I expected to come on here today when I got up this morning to defend how he's hitting and that, it's not. And then he goes out today, goes 4 for 4. And it's like, all right, really don't have to tell anybody. We saw what happens when the balls start to drop in. But obviously it's a huge sigh of relief because the one thing I was really worried about is that the lack of production gets to him and that he starts adjusting what he's trying to do. I remember when that happened to Eric Hosmer his sophomore year, where he was hitting into some of the toughest luck I've ever seen a young player hit into early in the year. And it kind of broke him. I mean, he changed the way he was hitting line drives everywhere. And he changed his approach to the plate because his batting average was like under 200. The difference is back then we didn't have StatCast in 2012. We didn't have exit velos. Right. There's so much more data and the players are so much more comfortable with it that I have no doubt everybody in that clubhouse, from the front office on down to Caglianone, they could look at these numbers and everybody knew it's not just, oh, geez, you hit a line drive. No, you hit the ball 113 miles an hour and you just hit a guy's glove. Like, keep doing what you're doing. And he kept doing it today and he got the 4 hits. So the positive reinforcement is obviously very, reassuring.
Yeah. I think, I thought it was interesting, Keith Law talking about the inner pitch. You're showing about getting the hands in, and that is where they've busted him, right? They're like, okay, show us, big boy. Like maybe you can get around on the minor league guys, get around on this, and I think it's one that he's going to have to, he's going to have to figure out some of those to not be trying to get the hands around. It's great that everybody, to keep telling that story about how all the brain trust the Royals. Like, see what we got here? Yeah, absolutely. But there are guys that you're not going to get that around on, and you've got to figure out who those guys are, and just almost even roll the shoulder out into it. I mean, get the big Barry Bonds. I know you can't wear the giant one like Bonds used to wear. They limited how big those are, but get that pad and just start rolling out into those and take a hit by pitch on some. I saw one. I can't remember, was it? He was against the Cardinals where he had one that was busted in and he got wood on it. But I'm like, there was no way you were going to do anything with it, right? And I was like, Rudy Stein, that one, man. Like, just lean. Have you remember Bad News Bears and Rudy Stein, Walter Mathis, just lean into one. Get out there. And, I was like, I don't want to do it, Mr. Buttermaker. It really hurts. It really hurts. I don't want to do it. Come on, get out there. You'll do what you're told. Like there's a time and a place where that's your best chance. But we've seen him do that. And so he's got to either make that adjustment on how he's going to get the bat head around. But, I thought it was interesting that Keith talked about that. That's always been the question, and they're going to test him right away. So today he came through.
He did. And I don't want to read anything really into 5 or 6 games worth of sample size, right? Like, I want to be very careful here. But what's interesting, coming into today, this doesn't include today's numbers. Like, his chase rate was 33%. The major league average is 28%. Okay, more than it's what we expected. That's not terrible. But what I thought was very interesting, when he swings at pitches in the zone, his contact rate is only 72%. Major league average is 82%. So he's actually swinging and missing at pitches in the zone. He's missing more than the average hitter. On pitches outside the zone, his contact rate was 67%. When he swings at a pitch outside the zone, he's making contact almost as much as when he's swinging in the zone, which, I think says something to his freakish ability to make contact on pitches that are a foot outside. And, they have, he is laying off the pitches 2 to 3 feet outside the zone, but the 6 to 12 inches, especially on the outside corner, he's definitely swung it a lot, and he's made hard contact on a lot of those. He's gone the opposite way. But what I saw with my eyes that kind of corresponds to this is I almost feel like when there's a pitch in the zone, he is letting it rip. Like he has, you say, wow, how is it that is it good that he's making contact on those pitches outside the zone, or is it bad that he's actually missing on pitches in the zone? But I do feel like from what my eyes are telling me that he's trying to hit those balls in the zone a really long way. And the fact that he almost has that ability to decide, in the middle of a pitch, okay, I'm being defensive with this swing, just making good contact, or I'm trying to hit this ball to Pluto. That's, it'll be exciting to see how that develops. I do feel like he has plate coverage for a guy of his size And for a guy with his kind of bat speed, that is unusual. That to me is what makes him unique, is that he can hit a ball incredibly far, and yet he has like control of the bat. He'll take the outside pitch the other way. He'll take the ball inside and pull it. The ball down the middle, God help you. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Noah Cameron continues to pitch incredibly well. So, two pieces of the Royals farm system have come up and really helped keep the Royals in this fight. So,
don't sleep on Steven Cruz. He's my man.
And Steven Cruz has been outstanding as well.
He's been very good too.
98 mile per hour fastball, pretty good guy.
Not bad for one of the worst farm systems in the sport. Like the Royals, hasn't been they're only a game above 500, but like the pieces are slowly kind of going fitting into place here. It'll be exciting to see what happens the rest of the way.
Well, the first draft of Brian Bridges is awfully encouraging, right? And
Absolutely.
we look forward to the second one. And it was nice to hear Keith Law. Well, it's a good time to not have a top pick. Yeah, I mean, like, is this not the first time? Like, it seems like Royals have pick 6. Well, there's 5 guys in this draft.
Right.
Well, the Royals are picking 16. Well, boy, it'd be great to be, a top 10 pick this year, because you can't miss on any of them. Like, you couldn't fall out of a boat and miss the top 10. Like, seems like they, for once, are picking at a spot, and it's like, okay, this is a good time to be picking lower.
Yeah, I mean, when they had the 7th pick and they took Frank Mazzucato, Jordan Lawler went 6th, and everybody, like, the Royals absolutely would have taken Lawler had he been there, and yeah, they've gotten kind of screwed in that regard.
Jordan Lawler hasn't pissed a drop in the big leagues. I can tell you. I've watched him get called up twice. I mean, I think he's going to. He is a great prospect.
I would trade Frank Mazzucato for Jordan Lawler.
I would too.
I know it's my bold and daring take for the show, but I would trade Mazzucato for Lawler.
I would too, but I'm just telling you, like, so far, as the proud owner of Jordan Lawler in my minor leagues, I've put him in there twice and gotten
hell hath no fury like a fantasy baseball manager spurned. Let me tell you.
Right. That is right. That's 100% right. Listen, you can support the Kaufman Corner podcast by supporting our great sponsors like David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. Dave and his crew, absolutely fantastic at helping you with your insurance. Give them a call at 816-781-7331. You can hit Whataburger. Are you hungry right now? They're open 24 hours. They're even serving breakfast starting at 11 p.m. That's right, 11 p to 11 a. And don't forget, for a limited time, you can get the mushroom and Swiss burger, the sweet and spicy bacon burger, the honey barbecue chicken strip sandwich, and my favorite, the patty melt. Wash it all down with a banana pudding shake. It is all for a limited time at Whataburger and our friends at Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers. They've been serving Kansas City for more than 40 years. If you've been hurt in an accident, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 22222, or call 816-400-HURT. For the good Dr. Rany Jazayerli, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us. And thank you to Keith Law for joining us here in the Kaufman Corner podcast.